What is good, everybody? Welcome to another joint gold standard Grant Cohn production. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Grant Cohn, fresh off vacation in the Hamptons. What's up, Grant?
I'm doing good. Hamptons are fun. I was not at the white party. Somehow they didn't invite me. They didn't think I was one of the top A-listers in the country. Next year,
And
me and you, Rob.
Is that why you got the white shirt on today? That's what you were going to wear?
All I wear is linens now. All I wear is linen now. I'm a really obnoxious, bougie jerk, and it's fun.
We are live streaming this on both of our YouTube channels, the Grant Cohn channel, the Gold Standard Network YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe both. Going to get into a couple things today. First, I have been diving into the Playcallers podcast series that Grant was making fun of earlier this year when we found out it was going to come out. There's a ton of good stuff in there. I haven't finished it yet, but there's so much good stuff in there about Kyle Shanahan and how he works and McVay and their whole thing. So we'll get into that. Plus, the Deebo interview that everyone is talking about. There is something that people are missing in that interview that jumped out to Grant. So we're going to get into that as well. Let's start with this Playcallers series. I'm fascinated by it. There's a ton of stuff, but one of the first things I wanted to get into, because I thought it was really interesting, is when they drafted Robert Griffin III, and this Kyle says this himself, he literally spent a year studying every zone read running quarterback, Tebow, Cam Newton, everyone that was in the league, but he didn't watch any of their college stuff. He watched just how the NFL defenses played them. And then he said, okay, this is how defenses play them. This is the only way they ever get stopped. So I'm just going to do everything out of the pistol, and I'll have a zone read option on every single play. And they built the entire offense based on that. And Kyle took his scheme and adapted it for the pistol formation. And guess what? Robert Griffin III won Rookie of the Year, and they ended up playing really well.
And he had a Hall of Fame career, and he went on to have so much success. I love that story. The Robert Griffin III story, it's great. It's phenomenal.
Well, RG3 is also on this show, and he goes into how they worked everything. But I thought that was fascinating because my question is, like, did they do the same thing for Trey? I don't know. It feels like, to me, they're trying to wedge Trey into Kyle's system. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Well, I think when you look at the runs up the middle, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? They did that a lot at North Dakota State. Mm-hmm. But at North Dakota State, Trey Lance was like running over defenders. You know? He like Josh Allen does. And I think Kyle Shanahan thought that maybe Trey would be able to do that in the NFL. No, absolutely not. So I think from Kyle's perspective, like, I'm just using him how he was used in college. Yeah, but you also sat him for a year. And you did that because you said you didn't want to use him like the way you used him. Like, you didn't sit RG3. You played him right away, and you're like, all right, I got to get you on the field. I'm gonna use a lot of the concepts you used in college. Fine. Trey, you sat him for a year. The whole idea was you're going to fit him into your system, and then he's out there and he's running quarterback power. So I don't know. Maybe you didn't teach it well enough. Maybe he's not as good enough student as we thought, but I don't know.
Listen to how far ahead of defenses they were with that offense. Kyle said they ran the same play 80 times in that year. They completed it 65 times for 20 yards per catch. Like, the league.
Does he still know these stats, man? 10 years later, tooting his own horn.
It's amazing. The league was not prepared for this offense. And this was the quote I thought was really interesting. This is directly from Kyle Shanahan. Quote, "We had a quarterback who was elite with his speed. It was the easiest thing ever." Which
couldn't keep him healthy, though. All I know is that the Niners were doing the same thing as Washington at the same time. Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, they had Colin Kaepernick. They didn't start the year doing the pistol, but they were itching to do this. They did the same thing. They had the same amount of success. Their quarterback didn't get hurt, and they went further in the playoffs. So I love this revisionist history of Kyle Shanahan, like, being ahead of the curve and being super smart and stuff. But, like, the Niners did it. Greg Roman did it, and no one thinks he's a freaking genius. I watched Do the Right Thing the other day. This is neither here nor there, on the plane ride home. Okay. And there's that famous scene where dude comes in, the Sal's family. He's like, how come there aren't any brothers on this wall? How come there aren't any brothers on this wall? How come there aren't any brothers in this play calling series, man? How come to be a genius play caller, you have to be 35 and look like me? I want to know. Where's Eric Bieniemy? It's ridiculous. I just feel like this is perpetuated myth that these geniuses. It's like, man, it's the same four guys you talk about all the time. I need to know. I want to know.
So
why aren't there any brothers on this wall? Come on, Sal. You know how that movie ends. Doesn't end good. I'm just saying. Do the right thing.
Well, I don't
What am I
think that
talking about? Sorry.
the takeaway is that no one else is running the pistol. The pistol is just a formation. It's not an all, like, that's all it is. So other teams were doing it. And they talk about in the series about how there's nothing new under the sun and all the coaches steal from each other and stuff. But I just thought it was interesting, all of that. I almost wonder if Kyle took that experience and then looked at Trey Lance and was like, we can do the same stuff. And we like Trey off the field, mentally, as a hard worker, all of that stuff. And we can recreate this.
Trey and RG3 athletically don't have a lot in
Not
common.
close.
Like RG3 was a Olympic hurdler. He was one of the fastest. He was running track at Baylor. And Baylor has like the best track team in the country. Dude was like super duper fast. If he were in Madden, he would have been a 99. Trey's like an 84 in speed, right? He's not super fast, but he's big and you can do stuff. Like, they're very different.
RG3 ran a 4.41.
4.41. I'm sure. Like, I'm sure his 100-meter dash was like a 10.2. I'm sure his 200-meter was. I'm sure he could have run any freaking race he wanted at a very low time. He was a great athlete. Trey's not like that. And again, the whole thing with Trey was we don't want to play him right away. We want him using like a real. We want to develop him the right way. That's what he said. He never said that about RG3. I think he was always down on RG3. Like, yeah, okay, like you can run and we can leverage your speed until you get hurt. But with Trey, we're going to develop him the right way. But they never did. Or maybe they have. I don't know. Maybe it was instead of a 2-year plan, it ended up being a 3-year plan because he got hurt. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. The other thing I learned, and this comes through repeatedly through interviews with other people that have worked with him, Kyle is super hard to work for. Like, really hard to work for. Saleh said there were times where he and Kyle would go a whole week without speaking because they would argue about football and about schemes and play calling and stuff. Like, he's incredibly hard to work for. If you have an idea and you take it to Kyle, you have to have every answer. For example, like, hey, if you're like, I want to run this play. He's like, all right, what if they come out in quarters? What happens? What's your answer? What if they come out in cover 2? What if they come out in cover 3? What if they blitz? What if this guy doesn't do? And if you don't have all those answers, he doesn't listen to you. Like, he's just like, nope, I don't want to hear. Like, you need to have it mapped out and ready to go.
That can be pretty frustrating if you're a defensive coordinator, though, and you're like, this is my game plan for this. They're like, and Kyle's like, nah, let's do it this way. It's like, hold on, Kyle. You don't do defense. I do defense. That could be frustrating.
So I think that, like, don't plan on Steve Wilkes or DeMeco Ryans or Robert Saleh. Like, I don't think any of those guys are going to be here long. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because schemes and stuff evolve. But I do think it's just something to note because I think it applies to players too. Like, he is just hard to work for.
Well, I think when you look around the league, the landscape of the league, who are the most powerful head coaches in the NFL? Powerful. Kyle's up there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are not many coaches who have more power. I mean, in terms of like over the 53-man roster, over the front office, he hired the general manager. Like, he can do whatever the hell he wants to do here. He brags in front of Jed that Jed has never, ever told him what to do in 7 years. He brags about it. And Jed's like, yeah, that's true. I just sit here with my hand under my, I just sit here in my hands and it's great. So that's Kyle. I mean, he's at like the Bill Belichick level in terms of organizational power. This is the San Francisco Kyle Shanahan's right here. Yes.
And if anybody, like, if you didn't believe that, then you're just being naive. Like, once you find out that they told you he hired the general manager, like, once they tell you that, you know he's got all the power.
Like, I don't think Sean McVay has that kind of power on the Rams, and he won a championship. Like, there are very few. I don't think Mike Tomlin has that kind of power on Pittsburgh. There's an actual front office there that could fire him one day, although they don't fire coaches.
It's an ownership, though. Pittsburgh's all about ownership.
Right. I love that. Pittsburgh. Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing is, like, McVay, it seems like McVay has made an effort to spread the credit. They talk in the Super Bowl about how players were changing stuff on the fly or changing stuff like in practice, and how McVay, and it was a blend of the system, the scheme, the play call, the players. McVay has one specific play on the go-ahead drive in the Super Bowl where he talks about, like, I called this play and it was the worst defense that could have happened against that call, but Stafford and Kupp made the play work.
I like that about McVay.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that same. Kyle's not taking the credit all on himself. He's not doing that, but he's also not spreading it out to anybody else either.
You never hear Kyle be like, man, I called this terrible play. Like between us, it was freaking awful. But Jimmy Garoppolo saved my butt. Like he would never say that in a million years. And I think that's a big difference between Kyle and Sean. Like I think most people would agree that Kyle is more creative than Sean McVay when it comes to X's and O's. Just more creative, has a better sense of how to get people open, or maybe one step ahead. Like McVay's looking at Kyle, kind of copying his work on the test a little bit. That being said, like as a head coach, who does a better job with his players? Who does a better job managing games? I don't know. You might want to go with McVay on that one, considering he's finished the job once.
They all acknowledge, and they've done this multiple times, because this like idea of getting all these coaches together to talk about the system and everything, it's been done before, and in the past, and on this one, they all acknowledge Kyle is the godfather. McVay acknowledges it. Saleh acknowledges it. LaFleur acknowledges it. That like Kyle is the genius. Like they look up to him. It is clear that they do.
Interesting to me, because to me, the godfather of this whole tree is Mike, not Kyle. It's Mike Shanahan.
Well, I mean,
yeah, Kyle's his son, so I guess that maybe that's why Kyle gets so much respect, because he's been around Mike since birth.
Well, literally, the podcast begins with the phrase, "We have to start with an homage," and the homage is to Mike Shanahan.
Of course, it's his freaking coaching tree. Absolutely, you have to. Yes.
And there are just so many like interesting little nuggets in there. So when Shanahan designs a play, he draws it on the whiteboard. And then every variation of that play, he draws on top of it in a different color. So literally, like you see the play on the whiteboard, and then it's like they just draw all the variations until it's just like a huge friggin' mess. Oh,
right, because he has like a slight different variation for the play against each coverage.
Yes.
Right?
Also, you want to hear something really weird?
Yeah.
Kyle stands on his head before games. Literally, like a yoga pose. Stands on his head before games. Apparently, it's like a yoga thing. It's like a mind-clearing process. But literally before games, he is standing on his head.
Is that why he threw the challenge flag on that first drive in the NFC Championship game? Because he was so locked in and focused? Look, it's so funny. Like, if you decide someone's legendary and great, anything they do, you can talk up. Oh my God, he stands on his head. That makes him different and better.
It's not presented like he's so great because of it. It's just presented like, hey, this is a weird thing that he does. Like you are looking, quirky, right? You are looking to just ding him at every instance. Like you're.
Let me be fair. I haven't listened to this, and you have, and so I guess I'm just interpreting it as another piece that's celebrating Kyle Shanahan, and it's not. So I want to, for whoever made it, I want to be clear. I haven't listened to it yet.
It's Jordan.
Okay. It's probably even-handed and not just a celebration of a bunch of people who haven't won anything except for McVay.
They talk about Kyle in that way, but also like
stands on his head.
Mike McDaniel talked about Kyle. He said basically like,
did he talk about vaping? McDaniel? Did he talk about that?
No. He said, let me see if I can get the quote. He said he was super happy that Kyle wanted him to be the offensive coordinator, quote, however exploitative it might be.
What does that mean?
I was like, what does that mean? And I think it's just because Kyle drives these guys hard and makes it hard to work for. But a big selling point for McDaniel was that he got to do weekly press conferences. And the quote that he gave was,
exploitative that means. No. What does that mean? Slow down. Dude went to Yale. He means something by that. What is he talking about?
So he got to do the weekly press conferences. That was a big deal to McDaniel. And he said, quote, I wasn't going to be a secret anymore. So I think McDaniel was definitely ready to be out of Kyle's shadow. Or at least
I think what he's saying is that being the offensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan is a ceremonial position. You're not doing anything differently. But what you get is a press conference. What you get is a platform. You can talk. People know who the hell you are. You're not just the running game coordinator that 7 people covering the team know about. Like, you're talking once a week. And you saw how Mike McDaniel did. All of a sudden, he was so much more engaging than Kyle. He had a sense of humor. He would talk at length. He was just as smart, if not smarter. And he had none of the defensiveness that Kyle Shanahan gets. Well, because he wasn't the head coach. So he didn't talk after games. He would just talk on Thursdays. Easy to, but he killed those press conferences. He was making jokes. All of a sudden, people knew who the hell he was. He was smart.
Listen to this sneaky thing by McDaniel, what he would do. So, like, they were all competing to get Kyle to incorporate the plays that they designed into that week's game plan. Like, it was a big competition between McDaniel, McVay, LaFleur, all those guys. McDaniel would take a play to Kyle and he would say, can you name this play for me? Because in McDaniel's mind, once Kyle named it, it became his and he took ownership of it. And I was
McDaniel is so
that
smart.
dude is a genius, man.
I feel like Kyle Shanahan's very smart, but he doesn't have like those type of people skills because he grew up rich. And you don't, no offense, but like I don't think you have to. But McDaniel, Saleh, the people that like came up from wherever they came, like those people are very clever and they're often very good at getting people like Kyle on their side. The rich kid in school. And I think it's very interesting how you see guys like Saleh and McDaniel work people, how they work people.
Well, McDaniel went to Yale, so I don't think we were holding any bake sales for him.
But it's not just book smarts. Like Kyle's book is playbook smart to the nth degree. But is he people smart? I don't know. I mean, the way players and coaches work him for money is great. Like all those people in Cabo, they all got paid. All those coaches, they all got paid. Smart. But to Kyle's credit, he spreads the wealth around. I was talking about that yesterday with my dad. Like one of the things Kyle does is he gets all of his friends paid. All of them.
They all get
that, man.
Khalil watching on YouTube says, Grant, you need to listen to episodes 3 and 4 of this podcast. McDaniel is taking shots.
Okay, all right, I will. Okay, all right, I will. All right, sweet.
Like I've kind of pointed out, like he has said some things that definitely made me, like when he said I wasn't going to be a secret anymore, that may not be a shot at Kyle. It may just be the fact that like assistant coaches don't get the love that they should, but it jumped out to me.
It wasn't an endorsement of Kyle. I kind of get the feeling that McDaniel felt that he was like Spock to Kyle Shanahan's Captain Kirk, the guy in the back, the guy doing the work, the guy doing the homework, getting no credit. Because I don't know if people know about McDaniel's past, but he had like a little bit of he was like an alcoholic
yeah.
He was an alcoholic. So he kind of had like to take a step back. And I think he felt like he was never going to get promoted. And I think he felt like he was the most gifted person on the staff.
Well, he literally says, I owe my entire career to Kyle Shanahan, my entire football career to Kyle Shanahan.
Yep.
Exploitative or not, like literally, like that was the sentence. It was all part of the same sentence. So
it's like and I know how this goes, right? Like if you're giving people a start in an industry and they have no resume, you're doing them a favor. Also, they can't ask for that much. You know what I mean? Like, so when he says exploitative, like how much did they pay you? Like you had no resume. You're 20-something years old. You know, like you're just happy to be there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is an incredibly hard life. Chris Sims has talked about that when he worked for the Patriots. Like, it's just a grind. They pay you very little money and you have to work all the time.
That's why it really helps if you come from like a really rich house, like Kyle.
Yeah. And Chris talked about that too, about how he's mentioned, like, if he didn't have the money that he did because of his family, like he probably wouldn't have been able to go into coaching because it's just too much. You don't get paid enough.
Saleh was going to go into Wall Street like his brother did because he's really smart. I mean, he could be really successful doing whatever the hell he wanted to do. But he decided to go into coaching and he went into quality control. Like you really got to bet on yourself to do something to do something like that. I respect people like that. I respect Kyle too.
So that's
anything else from this
podcast? Andrew Whitworth had a good quote about McVay. He said, Sean has the paintbrush, but every now and then he would let you change the color.
Kyle won't do that.
I don't think he will either.
Kyle won't do that.
Kyle might let you change the shade, but not the color.
I don't even know about that. If Kyle could ever grow and like just let go a little bit, he might just become the coach that everyone thinks he is or wants him to be. But I think that's his big flaw. He's too much of a micromanager. And I don't think he's changed that much since he's come in the league. I think he's pretty much been the same dude. I think he's been on a mission to prove that who he is just fine. And he doesn't need any growth. He doesn't need any change, which is kind of a bad place to be. I think you need to be a little bit more open-minded in life and be a little more open to changing and open to feedback. Feedback is tough to take. You ever notice that? A lot of people can't take it. They can give it. They cannot take feedback. A lot of people, most people don't want to hear what they don't do well. And when they hear it, they get defensive and try to prove you wrong the rest of their life.
Yo, you're right. Because so for years, I was a producer for national shows, giving feedback to talent all the time.
I want to hear it.
And this past year, I got to host shows for ESPN, and the people at ESPN gave me feedback. And my first reaction was, they don't know what they're talking about. So
it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
It's hard.
I don't know that Kyle is on a mission to prove that he can do it his way. I almost wonder if Kyle feels like he's never gotten the chance because his quarterbacks keep getting hurt. Although he did have a chance with Garoppolo in 2019. So,
yeah. I'd like to know Kyle Shanahan's like private feelings about the quarterback injury thing. Like, you really think it's just bad luck year after year after year after year, or like privately, or do you think there's something you could do a little bit differently? And are you going to?
It's a
Because he's
good
not going to
question.
admit it publicly. I understand that. But like privately, what's the plan here?
Listen to this. This is great. So sometimes like people say like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You know more football, or Kyle Shanahan knows more football than you, and blah, blah, blah. And they're right. But there are times when we are dead on balls accurate about reading the situation. Perfect example. Kyle was talking about the divisional game against the Vikings in 2019. And the quote from Kyle is, we go into the game and the quarterback throws the ball directly to the linebacker who drops it. And I think
he says the quarterback. That's hella funny.
I think he said the quarter. I don't want to quote him on that because I'm not 100% sure, but I think he says
like we don't remember who that was. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. But he says he throws it directly to the linebacker and he drops it. And then I think I'm going to run this ball every bleeping play. And that is exactly what happened in the Minnesota game. And we all saw it. Yeah. And then he even says in the next game, like, we only completed 6 passes. Like,
so what happened in the Super Bowl, Kyle? What happened in the Super Bowl, Kyle?
We were dead on. It was literally, he saw Jimmy be shaky and he took the ball away from him. And he took it away in Minnesota.
Until the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl when they were up 10. He was like, you know what, Jimmy? I trust you again.
Like, Jimmy audible.
I trust you.
You're always pivoting back to a Shanahan criticism.
You got to even it out. Until he gets that Super Bowl, it's got to be even.
That's such a crazy, like, you can be a great coach and never win a Super Bowl. It's possible.
Sure. But he's also not immune to criticism. When he wins the Super Bowl, I'll stop criticizing him. But until then, I got to even it out. Right. I have to.
Yeah, right.
I got to.
I'm sure if the 49ers won a Super Bowl by running it,
they were like, Grant, this guy's getting too much. The football guys came down, told me like, Grant, this is on you. All right. You are the prophet of Kyle Shanahan hate until this man gets his team to the promised land. He ain't at the promised land yet. He needs you to push him because Rob's not pushing him. All the people that say that Kyle's the greatest ain't pushing him. Kyle's just sitting there like, yeah, we're at the promised land.
If Kyle won the Super Bowl by running it 50 times, you'd be like, oh, it wasn't his system. It was the running game. You'd be the first.
Dude, if he won the Super Bowl, I would give him credit. You get credit for winning the Super Bowl. You get a ring. That's it.
So.
You get. That's it, man. That's it.
I want to get to some of the super chat. Let's see. Scale of 1 to 10. How badly did McDaniel ether Kyle? I don't know what that word is.
Ether is the song that Nas made dissing Jay-Z. I actually didn't think it was that good of a diss song. He just basically called Jay-Z gay the whole time, which I don't think is. He's not. So I don't understand how that's a diss.
Also, why is it a diss? Yeah,
it's not really a diss. I actually think that Ether song was highly overrated. The beat sucks too.
Oh well, I'm the
Jay-Z. Like, okay,
I'm the
better diss
urban white dude in the room, so I have no idea. I don't even know if I've ever heard that song. But
see, that's shameful. But it's okay.
JP says Ether better than Takeover.
I wouldn't. How about that? So that whole Nas Jay-Z beef was boring. How about that?
I haven't finished it yet. There's 5 episodes. I have about an episode and a half left. Some of them don't really pertain to Kyle at all.
Episodes about these guys? 6?
Like the second one is mostly about McVay. So if you want to
eat for breakfast.
The Kyle also had a line in there about how he wishes he could go for it every time on 4th down, but he has to guard against his personality. It's like, no, dude, you're wrong. Like,
what are you talking about? The Eagles do it all the time. You could do it.
He's being like mature and the grown up in the room by not doing it. He's just flat out wrong on it. Like, dude, just go for it.
He's trying to have it both ways. Like, I'm really aggressive, but I'm also really conservative.
Right. Even though I never go for it, I'm actually really aggressive.
My instinct is to be super aggressive, but then my other instinct is to be super conservative. So I actually have both instincts. It's like nonsense.
I don't care what you think you should do. I care about what you actually do when you're the head coach. So that was frustrating to hear.
Yeah.
But I think the whole thing is fascinating. I'm enjoying it way more than I thought. Right, they interview Raheem Morris. They interview like a ton of people about how they all got together. And I don't know that I don't know that Kyle is ever going to have like that long-term coaches, long-term quarterback. I don't think he ever will. Even if Brock like becomes the guy, I think there will be a breaking point at some point.
I have a question though. Like, why is this Mike Shanahan coaching tree constantly talked about? Like, I feel like there's a think piece about someone in this coaching tree every 2 weeks, especially in the offseason. Like, what about Andy Reid's coaching tree? No one ever talks about that coaching tree.
No one talks about Andy Reid's coaching tree? Really?
Where is the 6-part podcast about him and Eric Bieniemy and Doug Peterson? Like, where is it? They never talk. It's always like, well, I have Patrick Mahomes, so it's like they're not really doing anything special over there. Like, you sure?
I'm pretty sure
Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni was in the Super Bowl last year. I feel like Andy Reid's coaching tree has a lot more to answer for and talk about than Mike Shanahan's. But I don't know.
I mean, they have, it is a big coaching tree, but like, I know we talked about the coaching tree when he was in the Super Bowl because we had 2 weeks to freaking talk about him. And trust me, I know that came up. Is there a podcast series about it? No.
I feel like people talk about Kyle more than they talk about Andy Reid. With Andy Reid, people are like, yeah, he is Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I agree. Andy Reid is the greatest offensive mind of his generation, bar none.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way that yes, Patrick Mahomes protected himself in the Super Bowl against that. He moves very well. But also Andy Reid protected him too. I mean, the screen game that the Chiefs had in that game is just, no one is a better screen coordinator, play caller than Andy Reid. He's been doing it forever. Mm-hmm. And screen passes, you know what they do? They keep your quarterback healthy. They're really important. They beat the pass rush. And I don't know, maybe Kyle Shanahan, he has good screen passes, but maybe he could tap in a little bit more, keep his quarterback
that could throw him accurately so that he wasn't getting other people injured. Remember when Jimmy threw that high screen to Kittle and it jacked up his knee?
If you go back and look at Donovan McNabb, he had a Pro Bowl season his last year with Philly. He was old. He went to Washington to go play with the Shanahans. It was awful. He got benched.
Awful.
And it was awful. And McNabb went up to Kyle and was like, look, this isn't working. Could you put in some more screen passes like Andy Reid had for me? And Kyle was like, don't you ever freaking tell me what to do with my offense. And then he benched him and put in, who was it? Rex Grossman? I don't know. So there is a difference between those two.
Yeah, but also, let's give Kyle Shanahan prime McNabb and see what happens too. Like Andy Reid got a much better version of Donovan McNabb than Kyle Shanahan.
I have a guess what would happen. He'd get hurt.
Okay.
He'd get hurt.
Again,
every time Kyle's had a coach, the only time Kyle's quarterback doesn't get hurt is if he's not the head coach. Is if there's someone like Gary Kubiak or Dan Quinn who can overrule Kyle at some point. In Washington, he was essentially the head coach. I don't think Mike was overruling Kyle anything he did on offense. And here, he's the head coach. And I don't think he really thinks much about protecting his quarterback.
That is so asinine. First of all, Patrick Mahomes did get hurt under Andy Reid. Remember when his kneecap was down by his ankle? That is a thing that happened. The idea that a head coach can somehow prevent injuries to his quarterback is absurd. It's dumb. I'm sorry, Grant. It is dumb.
It's not dumb.
Okay, if he calls
argument
every
bad
time.
Argument. It's something you don't like to just say it's dumb, it's stupid. I think that's a bad argument. I mean, there's a pattern here. This happens all the time with Kyle Shanahan.
So what is it specifically?
To say it's just this is just luck. He has good luck. Kyle has bad luck. Andy Reid has good luck, and that's the way it's been for 20 years, 15 years. I think that's stupid.
I mean, Andy Reid's had quarterbacks that have gotten hurt. It's not like Andy Reid's quarterbacks have never gotten hurt. They have. Some of them
don't miss time. They don't miss time. They don't have surgery. Kyle's quarterbacks have surgery every year. So, but how many surgeries did Jimmy Garoppolo have with Kyle Shanahan? 3.
But how is that not Jimmy Garoppolo's fault? It's Kyle's fault.
How is it not Kyle's fault when it's all of his quarterbacks? How is he not the common denominator here? How could he not do a better job keeping his quarterbacks healthy? I don't know, man. It's funny when Trey Lance got hurt. I remember you on the conference call with Kyle grilling him about that play. All of a sudden, you 180'd and decided that Kyle and no head coach is responsible for any quarterback injury. Is that your position
about that play? I grilled Kyle about Jimmy taking his job and being a threat to Lance after they brought him back.
I don't remember that.
Well,
go and you talking to him about that play where you ran him up the middle. You were pissed about that.
Grant, he put in reps and started calling screens. Well, hold on. I think there's a difference between I wish he let Lance drop back and throw more and he got Trey Lance injured. I think there's a difference that
he could. Yeah. What I'm saying is he could do a much better job protecting his quarterbacks. And you're saying, nah, man, there's nothing Kyle can do.
How though? Throwing more screen passes? Is that it?
That's part
what
of it.
Specifically could Kyle do?
That's part of it. Yeah. How about don't call a shot play with a 7-step drop on the first drive of the game on 2nd and 6 from the 50-yard line? How about run the ball? There's all kind of stuff you can do, man.
Oh my God.
How about don't ask your third string tight end who was inactive the week before to block Hassan Reddick on a 7-step drop. There's so many things you can do. Take matchups into accountability. Take matchups into account. Don't just look at your pass pattern against that coverage, because football is actually played with players, not just Madden stuff. I don't know.
That is such a lazy. To me, that's lazy.
Yeah, I'm super lazy, man. I haven't thought about this very much. I just kind of shoot from the hip, but you're very nuanced.
No, I'm not nuanced, but I just think that it's cool to criticize Kyle Shanahan because his quarterback got hurt when other teams that called that same play and blocked defensive ends with the backup tight end didn't get their quarterback hurt. But yet when Kyle does it, it's his fault.
Yeah, man. I actually thought blocking Hassan Reddick with Tyler Kroft is super smart because Tyler Kroft wasn't active the week before, and now he's not even on the team anymore. But you definitely want the season to come down to that matchup. I thought it was genius. In fact, I don't think he gets enough credit for that play. It was actually really smart. It was great.
Nobody knew
it was the best call he had all year.
You're saying this with the benefit of hindsight. Sure, after the play happens, you could say, boy, if Kyle knew he was going to get hurt, he never should have called that play. But no one knows that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know that Hassan Reddick is going to destroy Tyler Kroft 9 times out of 10. But is Hassan Reddick then going to destroy Brock Purdy's elbow? Maybe only 3 times out of 10. So yeah, it's a fair call. You have a 70% chance of Brock Purdy not getting hurt on that play. So yeah, give it a shot.
But that is what is that math based on? How about Hassan Reddick?
You know that Hassan Reddick's going to win that matchup. You know Hassan Reddick is going to destroy Tyler Kroft. You're just hoping that Brock Purdy can get the ball out before he gets smashed. And he didn't. So I don't know. It was like the close your eyes, cross your fingers, and pray play. And it didn't work. Maybe 7 out of 10 times it would work. But the 3 times it didn't, that's what happens. And they did it in the first drive of the game. Remember, just a few weeks ago, someone was praising Kyle as Kittle, saying, he will call all these bad plays early in the game just so he can set up the perfect play and make sure that it's definitely going to work, that he's got the right look, the right front, the right coverage. That's not what he did against Philly. He called that shot play on the first drive on 2nd and 6 from midfield. And you know what? It was play action. The defense didn't react to the play fake. I mean, it wasn't set up. It was not set up.
So is your argument that if Brock Purdy had gotten hurt on the 3rd or 4th drive of the game, it would have been okay? Like, I don't understand. What if it's one in 1,000?
A high risk, high reward play. The reward was a chunk play, but the risk was a 7-step drop against the best pass rush in the league that doesn't react to the run. They do not play the run. They suck against the run. They don't react to play fakes. They get after the quarterback. And you called a play action fake on the first drive before really knowing how they would react. When your left tackle is now tipping plays in a pass stance, you called it. It didn't work out.
So, okay, no play action against the Eagles. You can't do it.
Hassan Reddick is on the opposite side of Trent Williams. He sees he's in a pass stance. The Philly D-line doesn't react to play fakes anyway, and you called it on the first drive of the game, and you're like, hey, man, that's football. I had to give it a shot. Okay, cool. Nice. You lost. And then Josh Johnson got hurt on a 7-step drop too. He did. He got drops against the best pass rush in the league. When the week before against Dallas, who didn't have as good of a pass rush, you gave up a pressure percentage on like 50% of your drop back. What did you think was going to happen against Philly? You can't block them.
Do you think that they didn't call any 7-step drops against the Cowboys in their pass rush? Of course they did, right? Any quarterback got hurt? No. So it's totally cool.
The best thing they did against Dallas, the best thing that happened against Dallas was that Brock Purdy somehow didn't get hurt. He was under siege the entire game. He ran around. He scored 19 points. He didn't turn the ball over. That offense sucked against Dallas.
But nobody got hurt. But nobody got hurt. You're changing the argument. Nobody got hurt. You're saying Kyle gets guys hurt with his play calls, yet he called similar plays against Dallas and nobody got hurt.
Okay, so the quarterback didn't get hurt in one game, but after 8 games of Brock Purdy running around and having to protect himself, it didn't go so well. So he was able to protect himself, which is what Kyle asked his quarterbacks to do, for 8 games. He got hurt in the first game. He got hurt in the last game. We'll see what happens in the future. But with Andy Reid, with Pete Carroll, their quarterbacks generally play every freaking game, every freaking season. Maybe they miss a game here or 2. Maybe they play through injuries, but they're not getting surgery every year like Kyle's are. All of them. Trey and Brock Purdy are coming off surgery this year. Jimmy was coming off surgery the year before that. Jimmy was coming off surgery in 2019. Surgery. Huh?
Jimmy got hurt with the Patriots before he even met Kyle Shanahan in part-time roles. Jimmy got hurt in back-to-back years.
He didn't have surgery until he met Kyle. If you're a quarterback and you meet Kyle, just plan the surgery ahead of time. Get to know a surgeon that you like, because that guy, you and him are going to be working together more than going to be working with Kyle. Every offseason, you and the surgeon. Is it your shoulder? Is it your knee? Is it your neck bone? Is it your funny bone? It's one of the bones.
It's crazy. Kyle's the only quarterback that calls 7-step drops. The only one in the league. The only coordinator.
McDaniel does too. I mean, Tua was on the ground. How many times twitching? I'm telling you, do they talk about that with the play callers? Tua having to like almost dying on the field and getting rushed back. Like, did they talk about that with Mike McDaniel? How about that?
I haven't finished
No,
it.
I didn't talk about that.
It hasn't come up yet.
It hasn't come up.
Official DNA Music says, I was referring to him and McNabb's play calling arguments. Kyle undermined McNabb, but then took his idea after benching him. Kyle's ego's been a problem. Look, all these guys have egos. They all do. If you don't think that they do, they all do.
Kyle's is on another stratosphere. Kyle's is on another stratosphere. He thinks he's the greatest offensive play caller of all time.
Maybe he does think that, but like
he does.
That's not necessarily the worst thing
all
in the
time.
world.
He's got Bill Walsh's install tapes and won't watch them. He's like, yeah, they're kind of funny.
So does every 49ers coach have to watch Bill Walsh's install tapes?
Watch them?
I don't know
you don't have to recreate them. You wouldn't even watch them? I'd watch them. That's a day.
You don't have to. By the way, they're 50 years old.
You don't have to do anything.
So you're saying if everything was exactly the same, but he watched the install tapes, you'd be cool with him? Like, I just feel like you are
Kyle. I'm cool with Kyle. I see Kyle all the time. I know Kyle. Kyle knows my first name. When we see each other, we say, "What's up?"
Well, I hope he
knows how it goes. I mean, these are the big leagues, man. He understands. Once he wins a ring, everyone's gonna genuflect, bend the knee, say he's the best. You got to do it first, though. Oh no, you don't, because everyone else already does it for him. So I'll just be the one guy who waits.
Let's get to the Deebo thing.
Please, I'm waiting. Let's do it. Okay.
So everyone has been talking about the interview that Deebo Samuel had with CBS Sports Radio, where he bailed because he was tired of the Eagles' questions. As I've said, it was weak sauce for Deebo to bail. He started, like, the interview didn't even start with the Eagles' questions. It started with,
I want to go to a taqueria and be like, "Can I get some weak sauce with this? Just a little bit of weak sauce on top."
It was weak sauce. I hated it. He came across to me as a petulant child, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like
one petulant child. It takes one to know, and I could see a petulant child. I'm just saying.
I'm right there with you.
I almost hung up on you 2 seconds ago. I was like, you know what?
I'm aware. But he was like, I don't like these questions. And he handed the phone off to somebody and they ended the interview.
Yeah.
It was weak because he was on doing a sponsored thing and they got the plug in to start the interview. So it was like, okay, I got my plug in and now I'm bail. Like, the whole thing was bad. But in that interview, there's something in there that people have missed that they are not focusing on that you were very passionate about before we started the show. So tell people what Deebo said that you think we should pay more attention to.
Okay, so this got buried because Deebo Samuel hung up, and anytime you do that, that's going to be a viral moment. I think he should know that. But okay, that aside, we can come back to that later. He was asked about Trey Lance and gave a good answer. He said he's actually improved quite a bit. He just got hurt. He's got a lot to prove, but he has improved quite a bit. And I feel like whenever a big name Niner is put in front of a microphone this offseason, Kittle, Deebo, Kyle, and they're asked about Lance, this is what they say. He's a lot better. You can see it. He's more confident. He's having fun. He's a lot better. And none of the national reporters ever react to that. They're always saying like, oh man, he sucks. He's third in the depth chart. He might get traded, kicked off the team. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, are you not listening? All the best players and the head coach of the team are saying he has made significant strides. He's enjoying himself. He's confident. I feel like I don't understand why people aren't talking about that. And I think that's the story here. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to do anything, but it does mean that his stock is up in Santa Clara. His stock is up.
I don't put too much stock in what Kyle says about him because Kyle and John Lynch if they want to trade him, have a vested interest in praising him and talking him up because it helps get other teams interested.
That's true.
Have they sent those marching orders to the players and are the players following them? I don't know. It's encouraging that he said nice things about Trey. I hope they're all true, by the way. I'm a Trey Lance guy. I've wanted Trey Lance to start forever. But if it
wasn't true, I don't think Deebo and Kittle would say it because they weren't, you know what I mean? I think they would say stuff like
Deebo wouldn't.
I don't know. I think they would. We've heard the 49ers find ways to praise Trey Lance without praising him for years. He's a great kid. He's such a smart guy.
Made of the right
stuff. He's made the right stuff. I mean, that's not what they're saying. And what they're saying is, we've been waiting to see some strides. It's been a little bit of time. He has some setbacks, but we see something. And it's early, but we definitely see something. It's encouraging. And I just feel like no one talks about that. I think I was at minicamp. I saw something too. In the past, he would throw the short passes too hard. The screens, the slants, the shallow crosses, throw them way too freaking hard. It was a problem because there's a lot of short throws in this offense. What I saw this offseason is a guy who all of a sudden can throw the short passes with touch. And that's a big thing for him because I think he's always been a good downfield passer. I think he always has been. He hit some really nice downfield passes in Chicago last year, week 1, that no one remembers because he missed some screens and lost the game. So I think it's true. We'll see if it keeps going.
I hope it does. That would be fantastic. Like, please just let him get out there and show it. Like, God,
right.
Damn.
Right.
Let him play in the preseason. Don't take away preseason.
Let him play with McCaffrey. Let him play quarterback. Don't make him play what he did at North Dakota State. He's been in the system for 3 years. You've been teaching him. Let him run the Brock Purdy offense. The one time you let him run something like that was against Houston. He freaking won. And he settled in as the game went on. And by the second half, he was eviscerating an NFL defense that had done pretty well against other good quarterbacks that year. So, yeah, I'd like to see that. I really think it'd be too bad if they banished him or got rid of him before he could play a preseason game or a real game with Christian McCaffrey. But thankfully, they've done such a good job of nuking his trade value that I think they have no choice and he'll get a chance eventually.
That is the weird part about this, is that they may have inadvertently found a good quarterback because they've nuked his trade value so much that now they're like, well, we've got to give somebody these reps in the preseason.
Exactly.
Like, he almost has to play by default.
Like if they had done a better job of boosting his trade value, he might be gone right now. But because they made it so obvious that they're so displeased with whatever they saw from him in practice, there's nothing they can say at this point. They're stuck with him. And given their pattern of not really doing a great job of keeping their quarterbacks upright and on the field, you kind of feel like no matter what they choose to do at quarterback, Trey's probably going to get a chance eventually. And if McCaffrey's out there, who knows what could happen?
Yeah, history has shown that he's going to get a chance to play at some point.
We'll take the blame out of it. History just suggests he's going to get a chance eventually, whoever's for whatever reason.
The 49ers have had one quarterback or one season with a healthy quarterback all year, and that was 2019. They've only had one of those since 2014. So even before Kyle got there, we just don't see full quarterback seasons at San Francisco. It's maddening.
And what's crazy about the 2019 season, go back and remember, Jimmy was coming off a torn ACL. He didn't have OTAs or minicamp. And so and he sucked in training camp. And he sucked in preseason. And there were reports that maybe Nick Mullins might be running So from Kyle's perspective, he was very nervous about his quarterback. He wasn't fully prepared. And what did they do that year? They ran the hell out of the ball. And that is one way that you can keep your quarterback freaking upright. And we asked him after the Eagles game, like, what can you do? And he got real snarky. He's like, well, maybe I should run the ball every time. Dog, that's what you did to win the NFC Championship game 4 years ago. You can do that. Like, that is your formula. Don't act like it's not. So I'd like to see the Niners be real committed to the run early in the season. If you're going to start Brock, fine, whatever. But his job early on should be handing off, and not just to McCaffrey, to Mitchell and Mason too. You got 3 of the best running backs in the league. Use them all and win that way like you did in 2019. Run.
I think that's what he wants to do. I think he would prefer, first and foremost, to, like, if he could pick any kind of game, he would pick the Green Bay game. Like, great, let me throw it 9 times or 8 times. I don't care. And I'll just run it every time. I don't think he wants to throw the ball. I think he is a run coach.
I disagree.
Because he grew up.
I think that was all about Jimmy. I think that was like, I'm showing Jimmy up. I don't trust Jimmy. I think he wants to throw the ball. He's a wide receiver. When Brock's out, when he has a quarterback he trusts, sometimes he throws the ball too much. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I think what you're saying is correct. Like, he clearly lost faith in Jimmy. Like, literally said it during this podcast series.
And maybe that's good this year. Maybe it's like, look, I trust Brock, but he hasn't had an off season. He's coming off this. I can't just throw him out there. Like, I gotta protect Brock. I gotta run the ball. That's when the Niners are at their best. When Kyle's like, I gotta protect my quarterback. Yes, you do. Do it. You could do it.
This is the crazy thing, right? Kyle just admitted that he lost faith in Jimmy against Minnesota and didn't want him to throw the ball against the Packers. And yet after that season, they still stuck with him instead of going to Tom Brady.
Why? Why? You told us what you thought of him in that Minnesota game. Nothing changed. Like, and that's why I keep feeling with the Niners is not a united front on this quarterback issue. It's like John likes Jimmy and Kyle has reservations, then Kyle likes Trey and John has reservations, and John likes Brock and Kyle has reservations. Like, that's probably why they never, stick to something or figure it out, because they have competing ideas.
That's the smartest analysis of this whole quarterback situation that I've heard anybody make, that there is a split there And that's why they're always waffling, because they're always switching plans and then having a backup plan from the other side.
Well, the original plan was wait a year for Kirk, and they passed on Mahomes and Watson, and it was very embarrassing. And they were like 0-10. And they had just, like, honestly, maybe they thought we might get fired. I mean, Chip Kelly got fired going 2-14. If we go 0-16 this year, we may not get Kirk Cousins. So I think they made a panic move at the deadline when they were about 0-8, traded for Garoppolo, which was not their plan. And I think John loved it because I think he felt, I saved this. I freaking saved this. Kyle's plan sucked. He didn't want Mahomes. He wanted Cousins. It wasn't going to work. I saved this. I got hired to be a freaking face man, but I did something great. I found the franchise quarterback. And Kyle always in the background like,
well, you know what the Jimmy trade did is it made the rest of that season irrelevant. Even if they lost the games, it would have been like, well, now he's got his quarterback.
Right.
Let's see what they do the next year.
Right.
And of course, he really got hurt in week 3.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I like your point about Deebo and the praising of Lance and how nobody is talking about that.
Okay. Lana, let's talk about him hanging up the phone. Because a lot of people think, a lot of Niner fans think, good. Screw that guy. It was a stupid question. I like Deebo Samuel more because he hung up the phone. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, like a lot of people like Marshawn Lynch more because he said, I'm just here not to get fined. That's cool. It kind of makes you like a cult hero or whatever. But if I were Deebo Samuel's PR guy on his team, I'd try to sit him down and be like, man, what did you really accomplish, man? Like, I'm trying to get you more money. I'm trying to get you more sponsors. You currently have no sponsors. You should have lots of sponsors because you're a great player. You got a freaking amazing name. Like, you should be a celebrity. You want to be a celebrity. You're not a celebrity. You're famous for being the guy who hung up on the guy. That's you. Could you look at Trent Williams and see how he works this? Like, can we use the media, please? Can we use the media? We're using them. We called them up and said, look, Deebo wants to talk about his charity or whatever. Like, we were using them, Deebo. Do you understand how this works? We're not trying to be their friend. We understand they're going to ask you questions you don't like. Like, you got to play the game because if you play it right, you get more money. Players, and I know you have like a lot of money now, but you don't have enough, dude. You got good money. You want FU money. You don't have that. Come on, dog. Let's go. If I was PR's guy, I would have tried to have that conversation with him, man. Like, I'm on your side. I want to put more money in your pockets. This only hurts you. 7 people think it's cool, and they're not paying you. They're not paying you. Yeah. When you do that, and like, first of all, Deebo's no stranger to media tours. I just wrote about this on my site, goldstandardniners.com. Shameless plug. When you do media tours, you're going to get the same questions over and over again. That's part of the deal. And Deebo's done it. Hell, I've interviewed him on media tours. He's done Old Spice media tours. He just did a media tour at the Super Bowl. Like, that's to be famous. He's not Brandon Ayuk. He wants to be famous. He wants to be courtside. He wants to be, you know what I'm saying? Great. Now you got to be a little more polished with the media, man. They're there to serve you. He could have said, look, I appreciate all the questions about the Eagles. I don't really want to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about something else. And then if the interviewer continues to ask about the Eagles, he's the jerk. But instead, you just literally like ran away. You took your ball and went home and handed the phone to a publicist or an agent or whoever it was. You could even say before the interview, Deebo doesn't want to talk about that. Like, I've had so many interviews where someone would agree, be like, yes, on this condition. He doesn't want to talk about this. Or he wants to see the questions before. How many times has an athlete or a coach wanted to see the questions before time? And obviously you don't want to give it to them because you want some spontaneity and like fresh answers, but you also want the interview. And if that's the condition, sometimes he could make that condition. You're Deebo Samuel, dog. You're not Jawan Jennings. Like, you could go there and say, you want to talk to me? Here are my conditions. I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. Guy will be like, okay, great. Or he'll say no, and you don't do the interview. No, and you'll be like, I don't want to do this. Great, thanks. Right. And that, look, I booked for ESPN. I booked for NBC. That does happen. Sometimes they say, we don't want to talk about this, or sometimes they want the questions, and it's up to that show to decide how they want to handle it. Now, I will say this. If you agree to stay away from a topic and then address it during the interview, then the person, I feel like, is within their rights to bail. And it's possible that happened. I don't know that. It's certainly possible. I would imagine it didn't, but I don't know. Yes, I don't know. And I would imagine it didn't too. If I had to guess, I would guess that it didn't. Because that's wildly unprofessional. I don't think what the guy did was unprofessional. I think what Deebo did was sort of unprepared. Like, you're not going on with Jennifer Lee Chan and Matt Mayoko, dude. Like, what do you think he's going to ask you?
Right. And by the way, like, you're the
who's
one
preparing you for these freaking interviews, man. Get me on your team. I could do so much better. I could make you money, Deebo.
So many players could use media training. Like you said, you use the media. Kyle Shanahan could use media training.
He could.
Use the media.
McDaniel used them. Saleh used them. And they should be trained by someone like me, not a PR person, someone that's in the media. I'll tell you. Or just talk to Trent Williams. He's freaking perfect. Trent's
pretty good.
He's really good. That's your guy. Come on. I'm just saying, this is total self-interest. I'm talking money and business, Deebo. It doesn't help you hanging up on people.
Right. From your own, just a selfish standpoint. Honestly, like
89er fans will think it's cool. That's it. 80.
He's not that good of an interview, by the way. His answers are always super short. I've interviewed him. It's a tough, you got to have 50 questions because all his answers are 5 seconds long.
And again, that feels a little childish too. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm going to give you the minimum. What sucks is when he actually has something to say, like in minicamp, when he wanted to talk about how he didn't play well last year, it was like,
it was great.
This is the most unique interview I've ever heard. This is the most introspective and brutally critical, self-critical athlete I've ever heard. This is great. But I guess he doesn't owe it to us to, like, have a freaking confessional every time. But I think it's clear that he is very smart, very bright.
Oh, I think he is
introspective. I just don't think he wants to give the media anything, which is too bad. I almost felt like he did it in 2021. He was playing the game to get the contract. He got the contract, and he's like, all right, I'm just going to be myself now. It's like, oh, man, like, go get more, but get the second contract. You're not done. Get sponsorships. Come on, man. You're like 26 years old. You can get so much more money. Get in the Hall of Fame. Get more.
Great One 765 says that's what the media does. When a player doesn't comply with them, the media will bash them. No, when you run away like a little baby, you deserve to get criticized. That's what it is. Some fans like you, Great One 765.
The fans are going to bash them too. Everyone saw that, man. Anyone with an opinion and eyes can look at that and say, oh, he lost his cool. You never want to lose your cool in life. Like Rob, like 20 minutes ago, was pushing my buttons, and I was pissed. I didn't like it. But I tried my best not to lose my cool. And then when he changed the subject, we both laughed. It's come on, you don't, because when you lose your cool, then you obviously lost. It doesn't really matter what happened. Everyone watching is like, well, that guy lost. And then Rob won. I think if people watch, people will be like, I don't know, it was a pretty good argument. Both guys got a little, riled up, but they had their moments. But when you hang up and go away, it's like, man, you lost. End of story is a TKO. You just lost.
How would you felt if we just ended the show when we were arguing about Kyle Shanahan? You probably would have not been a fan.
If I had gotten you to like cut me off, or like if you had left, then I would have felt like I won. I would have been like,
right. Like what if I was just like, no, and then just bailed out of the stream?
You're stupid. No, you suck. You're smelly.
Maybe we should have done that. That would have been good for the show.
Just have totally contrived fight.
Right, like Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman back in the day. Just totally make it up.
Yeah, we should do that. I think this content creator thing is way too serious. Like, we should just do stupid stuff like that. Yeah.
Now that we said it out loud, though, I feel like we kind of ruined it.
People don't remember.
Here we go. Official B&A music. You don't have to watch the Bill Walsh tapes, but he didn't have to lemonade stand them when asked. I don't remember what he actually said.
He basically said, he's like, yeah, I've taken a look at them. They're like really old. It's like really weird. Like, there's like guys in 3-point, like wide receivers in 3-point stances. Like, he almost was like, yeah, it's like, hasn't really stood the test of time. A little dated. It's like,
well, yeah. I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah, I still would want to watch it though. Like, you don't know what you would get from the experience, but I don't know. Like, right. I want to watch it. If someone said, Grant, you could come down to the Niners facility all week and watch as many as you want, I would say I'm fucking there. Sorry, excuse me. I'm freaking there. It's your channel. I'm freaking there. I want to be there. Did I ruin it? I'm sorry. I didn't say.
No, I mean, I'll bleep it out when I do the podcast.
Okay.
Bleep it out. It's fine. I think, I think that Kyle would say, look, am I going to watch that and incorporate that stuff into my game plans? Probably not. Can you glean other stuff from it? How Walsh runs the meeting, all that stuff? Yeah, you probably could.
Might be interesting. You don't know. That's the whole point of an experience, of a journey.
Nicholas says, as much as I love Deebo, I disagree with how he handled it, but let's not forget he's still young and hopefully we'll learn from the situation. Okay, it's not a huge deal, first of all. Like, Deebo
isn't that young.
Well, yeah, but like, it's not like a scandal. It's just, hey, this was kind of a jerk move. I want to say that too. I don't think this is like the end of the world.
I don't think he helped himself. I don't think he helped the organization. I think that's basically what I would try to say. Like, dude, you didn't help the Niners. You didn't help yourself. Some people think it was cool. It didn't hurt it too much, but I feel like you're not the face of the team. You're not the voice of the team. You're not the face of the team. You don't have a profile. You don't have sponsorships. You're not playing the game right. And with your ability, like in your name, and I mean, he should be one of the most famous players in the NFL. He was flirting with it in 2021. And last year was such a backsliding year that I don't know. It's too bad. He should be the man on this team. He should be the most famous player on this team.
He really
should transcend sports with a name like Deebo and the way he plays.
Thayer
he is Deebo.
On Mitchell's rookie year, Grant said he was fantastic catching the ball. Anyway, we balance that out and try to use more since he's injury prone. Did you compliment Elijah Mitchell's hands?
I mean, he's a guy you could throw a screen to. He's not the same kind of receiver as McCaffrey, but he's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. You could do something. They don't really do that very much with Mitchell. They used to throw the ball a lot more to Jeff Wilson Jr. But I think they need to use Mitchell and Mason. That's the thing. And throw the ball to Mason too. He has hands. Throw the ball.
Throw him. I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
The less stress you can put on McCaffrey.
More screens too. I feel like Purdy in particular throws a beautiful screen pass. All the different arm angles, sidearm, quick release. Very natural. As opposed to Trey, who's like a pitcher who fields a ground ball and is trying to get it to first base. It's like, okay, how do I do this? Should I run it over myself? Should I just underhand it?
Yeah, I have to say, when Trey throws a screen, you're like, okay, he got this. This was a good one.
Like Purdy can handle that. You feel good about that. Maybe they're going to do a 2-quarterback system. They tried it 2 years ago.
I'd love to see it. I don't. Brock strikes me as the kind of guy that would get a little touchy about that.
Who cares? Sorry, Brock.
Agree.
Sorry, Brock. Take your $400,000 a year and be happy. What are you talking about?
You know, the team
you have two quarterbacks who are somewhat limited, two quarterbacks who haven't established themselves. They complement each other. You tried it a couple years ago. Both are coming off surgeries. Shit. I don't know. Why not?
Maybe they will, and that's their plan, and they don't want to tell people.
3-quarterback system. Maybe they're going to have Sam Darnold out there doing something. Maybe he'll be the center.
And you know what? Brandon Allen, 4-quarterback system.
There you go. If Kyle does that, I'll call him a genius. If he gets 4 quarterbacks in the field at one time, I'll call him a genius right there. Can I just clarify and say that I actually really like covering Kyle Shanahan? It's fun giving him shit, and I appreciate that he takes it in a good spirit. He's a cool guy. There's a reason why players like Kyle, coaches like Kyle, and coaches I respect, Robert Saleh, really likes Kyle. You know, I'm playing a role here as like Kyle's, as like the, if he's Muhammad Ali, I'm Howard Cosell. He gets it. I get it. It's fun. I think it's part of pro sports. You got to have someone at your neck all the time. And I'm that guy. But it's not personal. And I actually don't, I say like fire him or trade him. I really don't want him to go. I know him. We've built a rapport. He's fun. He's a big name. If they fired him and brought in a guy like Ben Johnson or, you know, generic Coach B, that would suck because he might be a jerk and he might get fewer clicks. So Kyle, respect.
Wow.
I like Kyle.
Well, none of this. Yeah. I guess it kind of, with a head coach, sometimes it's easier to go to the personal side of things because a lot of their job is how they manage people and handle people.
And leadership. Yeah.
Right. Whereas with players, it's like, hey, this dude's hands just aren't good enough. Like,
yeah, exactly. There's not like one thing with Kyle and be like, man, his hand-eye coordination is the reason that he's losing this game. It's like, no. We're like playing amateur psychotherapist here. But anyway, he doesn't hold it against. I feel like early on he didn't like me at all. But then when you work with someone for 7 years, you kind of just be like, all right, man, you're a prick, but I'll see you tomorrow. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't like criticism, but also, like, you can't sit there and say no one should ever criticize me ever for anything. Like, that's
yeah. And he probably feels like I go below the belt sometimes, but he probably also feels like I'm on point sometimes. And if, you know, it might hurt, but it's like, you got to give me credit. At least I know enough football to be like, hey, how come Hassan Reddick was getting blocked by Tyler Croft right after the game? I'm sure he didn't like the question, but at the same point, he knew that was the question.
I think he would tell you also, like, until he does win a Super Bowl, there is a huge thing to criticize him about.
For sure. He
would admit that.
He would too, yeah.
So
like, Kyle seems like a cool guy. Like, for example, compare Kyle to Josh McDaniels. Okay. Josh McDaniels is another micromanager who thinks he invented football and thinks he like pretty much developed Tom Brady. Like, his ego is in another stratosphere too. And he's got the rings to back it up, but no one says anything nice about Josh McDaniels. No player, no coach.
They hate playing for him.
Everyone hates Josh McDaniels. Like, he's like, everyone hates Chris, everyone hates Josh. No one talks that way about Kyle. There's got to be something about Kyle. And I get it. As someone who criticizes him for a living, I like him. I get it. He's a likable person. He is.
He has flaws as a head coach, as every coach does. It's just, I think the people that criticize him most, like you, would say his flaws are the reason they haven't won a Super Bowl.
Well, he also has a lot of strengths. And I think so many people like to flex their football knowledge by saying he's like the cult classic. You know, he's like that movie that didn't win the Academy Award that everyone, when they turn 17, says that's my favorite movie. He's like Boondock Saints.
Good movie.
You know what I mean? It's like everyone goes through that phase. You're like, oh man, have you seen Boondock Saints? Like, that's the best movie ever. Like, no, but I know why you would say that. And a lot of people feel that, you know, it's he's the Boondock Saints. And I'm just like, no, it's not the best movie ever, but it's good. I mean, Willem Dafoe is nuts in that movie. He's a good movie.
Yeah. Willem Dafoe is nuts. If you haven't seen Boondock Saints, go see it. Quentin Tarantino. It's an excellent, excellent movie. Anyway, I feel like we got heated on today's show.
We do. I think we did a couple weeks ago too. We have some good arguments. You bring it out of me. It's fun. But then we change gears quickly. I think we do a good job.
That's true. Like and subscribe to both YouTube channels, Grant's YouTube channel, the Gold Standard YouTube channel. Rate, review, follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Thank you, everybody, for the chats. We just went over 4,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel on my side, so I'm happy about that. Appreciate the support, everybody. We're tracking down Grant. Only got another like 65,000 to go, and we'll be there.
Let's get started, baby.
Have a good week, everybody.
See ya.